Hi, I'm Audrey Moore. I am a user experience designer at Configura. And I know a lot of people have trouble with understanding what is UX. Why are we just throwing a bunch of letters together? And then it adds complication when you have UI UX, which is often put together. And then you have, well, 3 letters, but in a sequence of 4, all thrown together that not everybody knows what it means. It makes it very difficult for me when I'm trying to explain my job to people, even my mother. So it makes it really interesting. So I've made this slide deck to just whip out anytime somebody asks me, what is your job? Just kidding, I don't do that. But I have prepared a slideshow for you today to talk a little bit about what is UX. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll get started. So we're going to talk about what is UI UX. And let's just get into it. So first of all, when we talk about UI UX, it's design, UI UX design. I'm a UI UX designer. But what does that really mean? You know, a lot of people, when they think of designs, think of pretty pictures or, you know, a pretty interface, a nice button with a couple of colors that look really nice together. And that is the UI portion of UI UX design to an extent. There's even more to that, and we'll talk about that too. But we have to get out of this mindset that design equals what something looks like. It's not just about what it looks like. It's how it was created, creating with intention and approaching a problem with creativity and being user focused as well, and customer focused, however you want to, whoever you're designing something for. So you got to break free of this design equals something visual mindset. We're going to look at a couple of things today. I'm going to show you a little funny video that UX designers love. It's called The Mysterious Life of UX Designers. It'll give you a little snapshot into what the life of a UX designer looks like from the outside. Maybe you'll, if you've worked around UX designers anywhere, this may be familiar. If not, you'll start to understand, or maybe get more confused. We'll see. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what the difference is between UX and UI. Why do they need separate acronyms? Then we're going to look at design phases and design thinking. Design thinking is a process used in creating solutions of all kinds, whether it's digital products, physical products, life choices. It can be used in all kinds of ways. And we're going to see how that's similar to the design phases for interior design for my designers out there. And then we won't do design and configure. We're going to actually skip that step. I forgot to take that out. And then during our live session, we did a hyperspeed workshop. So I did my presentation and I don't know, I've aimed for like 10, 15 minutes. And then we spent the rest of the time on a workshop where everybody got engaged and got to experience UX for themselves. Since we don't have a whole group live together, I did do a mock workshop with my colleague, and so you'll get to see little glimpses of what that workshop could look like. If you want to follow along, you're welcome to do that too, or just use the principles in whatever problems you're trying to solve coming up. So let's start with this video, and we'll hit play, see if it works.
Art director, creative leader, idea astronaut. The classification of UX designers is constantly evolving. This example might seem like a new and trendy breed, but this is in fact an old-school UX designer. Notice how the wallpaper on his Macintosh says Comic Sans, but the artwork itself is not composed of that particular font. This is considered funny by his peers. This specimen has unfortunately fallen into a state commonly known as pixel paranoia, as he is contemplating whether this button should be here, or there, or there. This kind of aesthetic compulsory behavior that separates him from the UX architect. This peculiar being spends most of his time reading reports, which enables him to answer any question with a reference to a theoretical study. An unfortunate side effect of this obsession is the lack of certain other skill sets. A crucial moment in the lifespan of the UX designer is the usability test. This is where all the hard work can be rendered useless in a matter of seconds. One wrong move from the user, and it's back to the drawing board. Disaster has struck. This designer will have to face a demoralizing process of coming up with a better solution. Devastating. If you spot a UX designer interacting with common human beings, it is likely you are witnessing a ritual known as a workshop. The workshop consists of a small, separated pack, writing as much as possible on sticky pieces of paper. This is often followed by the pack decorating the walls of their current habitat with these vibrant colours. Why they display this sort of behaviour, no one knows. These rituals often include awkwardly choreographed exercises assumed to enhance creativity amongst the tiny pack. The result is a quite extraordinary display of human behaviour. Only time will tell how many viable ideas, or maybe yet another creative job title, will come out of this act.
All right, I don't know about you, but that cracks me up. Sorry if you heard me laughing at some point in there. I forgot to turn off my mic and I was just snorting along laughing. So anyways, if you don't understand what a UX designer is now, I can't help you. Just kidding. There's a lot more to learn. First of all, let's talk about what is UI versus what is UX. So UI stands for user interface. And most of you probably watching are somewhat techie, using design software or developing design software, so you may know what an interface is. You may not, and that's okay too. But an interface is what you're looking at on a screen in the world of digital products. So it's what you see on the screen, how things are placed, how readable things are, the layout, how things look. So if we look at our next slide here, you see we've kind of visualized it as an iceberg, the classic metaphor, right? So you have what you see on top, and then there's all the UX underneath. That's what's holding it up and keeping it in place. So UI is related to things like font, so what your type looks like, color, not just, what color you like, but how colors go together, what colors look good, what colors don't. So then we have layout, so how items are arranged on the page. That includes hierarchy, so maybe what text is more readable than others. Where is your eye directed? Is it going right towards the sign up button? I know in a lot of websites that's the goal, right? Get the click on the sign up button. So the layout can encourage users to go a certain way or make things more clear or more confusing. Also icons, so all the little things we click on. Spacing, making sure things aren't just crammed into a page, that there's enough information on a page and also not too much information on a page as well, that there's a place for your eyes to rest. And then another big one that is much more in depth than maybe we always think about is accessibility. This can relate to any of those things. Your fonts can be too fancy and hard to read. The colors, if they're not good contrast, can cause problems if people have visibility issues. Also with layouting, there's a lot underneath the surface with text, making sure things are laid out in the right way. So for things like screen readers, that they can read things in the right order. So there's a lot of stuff going on underneath that as well. Some of the things that a UI designer will create, or the output that comes from this role, is iconography, style guides. So style guides are documentation on the styles used and how to use them and when to use them. And they often come with getting a little technical, but components, which basically is like you could create a button that other designers can come and copy that to make sure that they're all using the same styles and in the right ways. Color selection, mock-ups. Mock-ups are going to be, they can be to varying degrees of fidelity, it's called, so how close it looks to the actual design. Usually the mock-ups look a little bit closer to what that final design is going to look like. It's not yet something you can click on, but it's a still screen that you can see what the design is going to turn out to be. And then, of course, the final visual design as well. There's a lot that we can get into with UI, but we're mostly going to focus here on the UX. So that big piece that's supporting underneath the UI, everything that you see, this is more about what you do, how you experience the flow of something, the interactions that you have there. And so UX is still, UI is still a part of UX. It's all one iceberg, but UX goes so much deeper. Things that UX is concerned with is user needs. So making sure we're creating things that are actually useful to the people we're designing for. Usability, how easy is it to actually navigate whether a website or a software. Patterns, making sure that we're using elements that are familiar. So, a drop-down looks like a drop-down, a search field behaves in the same way, or it should. At least across your products, and hopefully it was similar to other products they're familiar with as well. And then interaction, what are the different clicks and keystrokes and everything that's required to actually interact with the product. Some of the outputs of UX, we have UX research is a really big aspect. User stories, we're going to look at user stories in our workshop a little bit later and see how those can help form our understanding and direction of a product. Information architecture, this is how information is laid out. This is especially used in website design where you have like a main page and then some sub pages, and it kind of looks like a big org chart almost of how information relates to each other. There's a lot of arrows and a lot of different blocks of information. Wireframes are going to be that first step before mockups. So it'll be the layout of the page, but it's not going to have all the fancy colors and buttons and all of that. It's more about how is the information arranged on the page? Does it have the spacing, all of that? We get into prototypes as well. This is something that you can actually, it's a design that you can interact with. This can be, we'll see a little bit later, some pictures of paper prototypes that are really low fidelity and is working on creating something you can test on before you even start coding. And then usability testing is a really big thing as well. You saw in the video, watching the user use something and hoping that you've done a good job and that they click the right button, and making sure that your designs, when users are testing, they maybe feel sometimes like, oh, you're testing me, am I a smart user? We're really testing our own designs. Did we do a good enough job that you can come in off the street and figure out what you're doing? That's a hard one to do. So we've talked about what is UI UX, and with any sort of design, but especially, oh, whoopsies, clicked too soon. I'll give you a sneak peek there. But with UX design, with all kinds of design, any sort of problem-solving job out there, there's a thought process called design thinking. And this is a methodology, a way to approach a problem that is, it's a way to see a problem, be intentional about how you solve it, rather than just jumping in and thinking, okay, I think I have a solution. Let me just start coding or let me start building. It rather slows down at the beginning phase, helps you be a little bit more thoughtful about how you approach the problem, making sure you're looking at the right people that you're solving for, making sure you're really defining the right problem before you actually get into any sort of creation, and also not just going with the first idea you come up with. Sometimes the first idea is the best idea. Usually it's not. And even if it is, going through some thought processes can either confirm that or also lend some other ideas to build off of that first idea. So what is design thinking? It's a process. It's a problem-solving process, and we have, well, depending on which image you find online and which article you're looking at, there can be 5 to 6 different steps. We're going to talk through the first 5 here. Is the most typical design thinking process. I just liked this image, so I took it. Even though we're going to ignore the last step, it can be a part of it, but we're mostly going to look at those first 5. So the first step is at the top right. You can see it's a circle, so it's ongoing. The process can always continue and refine itself and all of that. But where we start is with empathy. Then we go on to defining a problem, ideating several solutions, prototyping, creating a lower fidelity thing that we can interact with and kind of test out. And then we get into the testing, and we then from there might refine and jump around to the other stages. As we go through our workshop coming up, we're going to talk a little bit more about each of those phases, what kinds of activities can be included, and a little bit more about why we do those. I also want to point out what I like about this graphic. It kind of groups the activities into 3 sections. You can see there's kind of some concentric circles. So the outside circle has 3 different segments. There's conceptualize, so understanding things in our minds first, then exploring, looking into possible solutions, not putting too much time into a final solution yet, but exploring possibilities, and then actualizing rather than jumping right to the actualizing and implementing first. We need to get through those conceptualize and explore segments first. I want to point out too, so the design thinking process, capital D, capital T, as we like to make a proper noun in the field, is kind of similar to what we have in the interior design and architecture design phases that are kind of industry standard across the board. With this kind of, with this phasing, we have programming, which is asking your customer the right questions, getting the information, understanding their needs, their wants, what needs to happen to the space, defining your goals for the project. We get into schematic design, where there's a little bit more exploratory design, rough concepts, some sketching, maybe looking at some possible ideas, not getting too far down the rabbit hole of a solid design yet. Then we get into design development. There's more refining of designs. There's more realistic design. Maybe you get some renderings in there. Start to do your finishes. Finishes, maybe kind of go in either schematic or design development. Contract documentation and contract administration. So actually getting the orders through and doing the install and all of that. So it's not an exact one-to-one of the process, but you can kind of see the same ideas, starting with the user's needs or the end customer's needs, getting into ideas and rough kind of defining the goals and all of that before you get into any sort of actual full-scale design, and definitely before install. With the digital world that I work in, it's kind of nice. If we mess up, we can go back and start again. With furniture, once you install, it's a little more difficult to go back and rethink it. So those early stages are especially important here. Now we have a nice little graphic we have that we use specifically at Configura. It's based off of, again, a concept out in the world, but we just, added our own little colors and fonts and all of that. And this is called the double diamond. And it's these shapes on purpose, and it represents what we call diverging and converging. So diverging is splitting up, bringing in more, is all about expanding, and then converging is bringing things in closer, into focus, narrowing down some options and solutions. So over on the left, we have empathizing with the user. That's exploration, it's diverging, bringing in more information, as much research as we can get, having a broad understanding of our end users. Then the first converging of the diamond is specifying the user needs. That corresponds to, from the other graphic, the define phase. And this is where you're actually really getting into the underlying needs of the users so that you're solving the right problem. Then we can get into exploring the possibilities, which is diverging, having as many ideas as possible. Into build and refine, we're converging again, narrowing down the ideas, refining those ideas, figuring out what do we want to test, and then user testing can kind of diverge or converge, just depends on all the other steps. You'll see in the middle of these diamonds, there are some circular arrows. All of these stages can jump between the other. So the stages that we organize them in the design thinking world is the ideal stages, right? But sometimes you get to user testing and you realize, wow, we really missed the main point that we're aiming for. Maybe you have to go back to defining the problem. Maybe we realize that wasn't actually a problem. People don't care about this problem we tried to solve. We need to go back and redefine. Or you do the user testing and find out, okay, we were trying to solve for the right problems, but we just didn't go in the right direction. We need to go back to exploring the possibilities and come up with, either use some of our other ideas that we had explored before, or, maybe we need to do another sticky note workshop to come up with some other possibilities. So now is where we get into an actual workshop. So we'll go through each of the stages. I'll talk a little bit about those, about the activities that we did in the live workshop, and you'll get to see some little snippets of the workshop that I did with my colleague, Evelina/boss, and we worked on the stages together before the conference to kind of get an idea, or not to get an idea, but to be able to share that with you for this recording, so you could still kind of participate and be a part of the workshop experience. When we did this for our recording, we had a prompt to create a wearable device for a gym. So we kind of ended up going with devices that already exist and designing an app or some kind of interaction that is related to a gym. At the conference, well, the prompt that we generated, there's actually this prompt generator. It'll come up with random things so that you're kind of on spot presented with a problem. So the one at the conference was create I'm blanking on the right word, but create an app for like an in-car app. That's the word I'm looking for. An in-car app for a zoo. So I really like that one. Is definitely not one that you could come up with immediate solutions, at least not me. And so it was really fun to see people working on this unique problem. For your workshops in general, there's a good toolkit to use. I like to call it like a UXer's version of a sonic screwdriver. If you know, you know. If you don't, that's okay. You're not nerdy enough. That's okay. But we have, so there was that prompt generator. It's called Sharpen. If you ever want to kind of explore or just come up with some creative solution or creative ideas, just feel like being creative for a day, and I don't know, you can go there. It has prompts for physical products as well as UX products and some other, I think, like marketing something too. So it's kind of fun. We also had some 8.5 by 14 templates. You'll see what that looks like. I made a template so we could kind of see the different phases of design thinking. Each person had their own 8.5 by 11 page. We had white tablecloth, so we also had a surface to write on, and then Sharpies. You could, use a pen. What I like about Sharpies is because they are thicker, it forces you to put less on a paper. When it comes to generating ideas and rough sketches, if you have a pen and you can be really precise, you end up spending too much time on one idea. A Sharpie gives you this much space and this much writing that you can do, so you have to kind of churn things out quicker. This was especially helpful with the very short amount of time we had for the workshop. As you saw in the video, there's also usually a lot of Post-its involved. I decided not to use Post-its for this workshop just to have less paper to pick up after the fact. But there's all kinds of activities you can do with Post-its, without Post-its, all of that. But these are some pretty common tools in your toolkit when you're doing a UX workshop. So starting out with empathizing with the user. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. So getting to know who are the end users, what are their needs, what do they care about, what are their motivations, what do they not like, what is painful in their daily life, just asking good questions to see who they are as a whole person. A lot of this is research-based. You can have interviews, you can do surveys, to some extent doing some collecting some data on, on other aspects of that, either them as a person or how they use things, and then also observation. I think this is a very qualitative experience. So we're looking at those deeper insights. We're looking at who they are as a person rather than just as a number. Some things that can come out of the empathizing, you can create personas, which is what we did in the workshop. This is a sort of imaginary user, but it's based on research and it's based on your end user or your customer and how they, their values and all of that. So it's a kind of conglomeration. That's a word that's a little difficult to say, actually. A conglomeration of a lot of users based on your research. You can also create journey maps or user journey maps, which show you the different steps of a process that they may take. And it goes into the details of what are the kind of actions within that step, how do people feel at those stages, and then you can also come up with some possible ways that you can improve that step of their journey. And so those are just a few of the many outputs that you can create when empathizing with the user. Today we're going to do some personas. Personas can be any level of detail. The one that we did for the workshop looks somewhat similar to that one in the upper left corner, which is name, age, location, frustrations, needs, and goals. I think I changed in the template one of those, but just a little bit about them, just kind of a snapshot. These other ones here I just grabbed from the internet, and they just have a little bit more detail than what we went into. Might have a little bit of their background, habits, technology usage is a big one, like how, maybe not usage, but expertise of how complicated of software they use, what are some other things that they're dealing with, motivations, all of that. So here we will show you a little bit of a snip of Evelina and I coming up with a persona.
Great. Okay, hello. We are doing a little mini workshop here to give an example of design thinking, how it fits in with UX. I have with me Evelina.
Hi.
And she is the head of design.
Head of design, yes.
Over in Sweden. She's my boss, so I better do a good job. But okay, so we're going to walk through the workshop that we did for the live session. We're just going to do it as an example, and we can kind of show you our results and our phases along the way and how we kind of collaborate, and hopefully that'll be a good example for you. Okay, so our first step is with empathizing with the user. And the activity that we're going to do is creating a persona. So this is one we're going to work with together on it. Some of our activities will be the two of us talking. Some of them will be each of us working individually and then reconnecting. So there's a nice little variety there. A little something for everyone. So for starting, also I'll tell you, we have generated a prompt by an automatic prompt generator, and so we've just been presented with this problem right now. The problem is, or the challenge, so the prompt is to design a wearable device for a gym. And let's get started then. So with a persona, we are kind of making up a possible person that we can be designing it for. What kind of person would be using this product? So let's start with name, age, and occupation. What should we name our gym goer?
That's a good question. What do you think about Kathy?
Kathy. Perfect. Okay. Age. Kathy sounds a little older.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, maybe
someone who recently retired.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Try to have a hobby once you're retired.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No offense to any Kathys who aren't old out there, by the way. But okay, someone who recently retired. What's retirement age these days? 60 something?
Yeah.
So we'll say 65. Which is kind of fun because sometimes older people do have a harder time with tech. So we got to keep that in mind with our challenge to make sure Kathy can use it. And then occupation, recent retiree.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just put retired. Perfect.
Great.
Okay, so we need to fill out motivations, needs, and frustrations. We'll start with motivations.
What do you think?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is like wanting to just stay active and stay,
Yes.
like keep life interesting now that she's retired.
Yeah.
Stay active can't spell, / engaged, we'll say.
Yeah.
What else?
I would think health is a good part. It goes together with keeping active, but still having health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a bigger picture that active is part of, can be a part of. Yeah. That's
Agreed.
good. Let's see. Anything else?
I mean, going to the gym, that can also be social.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe like make friends?
Yeah.
maybe? Okay. Or just be social? Is that more general?
Perhaps be,
Yeah. Yeah. Just lost all our work friends, so. Do you think that's good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
Next, needs.
What are you thinking?
I don't know. Do you have any initial thoughts?
I mean, I heard a funny quote the other day, which is, if you didn't track your workout, it didn't happen. So maybe something like that.
Keeping track, yes. Yeah. Yeah, we're all about tracking things these
Yes.
days. I've got my little Aura ring to help me track my sleep.
Nice.
Yeah. What is it? Tracking activity. Good. Maybe she, we're just making up stuff here, but
Yep.
maybe she travels a lot, so she needs to, her kids are all over, so she goes to visit them
Yeah.
and wants to be able to go to gyms in all those different locations.
Yeah.
So
Great.
access in different cities. you
Yeah.
say. What else?
I mean, think about when you go to the gym, it's always kind of clunky with all the things you need to carry around. Right? So your phone, your water bottle.
So how does that turn into a need? Like,
Bring few things, being light, or
yeah,
what do you
like
think?
packing.
Yeah,
I don't
packing a
know,
lot.
Pack light at the gym, yeah, something like that. I had another thought. Oh, I was thinking too, like, even as you were saying, like, there's a lot going on at the gym and there's a lot of different kinds of machines. I know when I've gone to the gym, I'm like, what is that for?
Yeah.
That looks horrifying. So maybe, like, knowing what things are for, some kind
Yeah.
of, like, education.
Love that.
Okay, we're running out of room there. Anything else we should try to squeeze in? I think that's good. Frustrations. Maybe like, I feel like there's always like different gym personalities.
Yeah.
Maybe she can get frustrated with some of the people there.
That's a good one.
What should we write? Gym snobs, maybe?
Go for it.
Gym snobs. Again, no offense to my gym snobs out there. We don't offend anyone, but
I mean, sometimes the machine you're planning to use is busy.
Yeah. So like, yeah, machine's busy. I thought of another need, actually. I know like some gyms will have classes or activities and stuff, so maybe wanting to know what's going on there.
Yeah.
That kind of goes with being social too.
Good one.
So let's say like schedule. Let's put schedule of gym activities. Getting really small writing here. Okay, back to frustrations.
Yeah.
Machines are busy. Yeah, that's a good one.
Could be in the music, because sometimes music will play that you don't really like. It's usually pretty loud.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I know like it can be frustrating if you feel like you're not making progress or like trying to find time for the gym, so maybe some motivation.
Yeah.
That always goes up and down, so we'll just say finding motivation maybe.
Good.
Okay.
Great.
I think that's good.
Okay, so we came up with our persona. Her name is Kathy, age 65, recently retired. You saw the clip, you know all of this. So here's just a little snippet. Again, we used the Sharpie to just keep it concise. We wanted to kind of go fast. And I just want to emphasize again that in general, this is based on research. And when we at Configura do create personas, we like to say where the research came from. That kind of built off of that the persona was built off of. So if we did 16 interviews at 4 different dealerships, we'll say that so that we know this isn't just something we came up with. For this workshop, we did just come up with it to kind of, jumpstart. We didn't have time in the 45 minutes to go out and find some personas, but we wanted to have something to start with. Now we move into specifying the user's needs. So rather than, okay, we have Kathy, let's solve for her, we need to really define what is truly the problem underneath that we're trying to help with. And we use the word problem. It doesn't have to be like a bad thing per se, but rather a thing that we want to achieve. So don't think of problem as a negative thing. Think of it more as a prompt or, the thing that we're trying to solve for. So we use that problem and solution verbiage, but it could just be something we're trying to improve about somebody's life. So some activities that you can do here in specifying the needs is, finding themes from your research. So we recently did a project where we had, 72 interviews, I think. We did 12 visits in person. So we had a lot of notes. It was a lot. I don't even think we finished the affinity mapping. We didn't have time. But affinity mapping is another thing. So we put together all our notes on a little kind of like a Miro board, grouped them together to find, these things are similar to one another. And then from there, we found the themes that helped us focus in on the problems. Another activity then that you get into is voting. This is great in workshops. Usually give people a couple votes and they kind of vote on which problem or which area or things that they think are the most kind of the most underlying issues. Also, we just want to keep asking why. So one common activity is just, we start with a statement. Like we could start with what was one of the, let's go back to Kathy here. So one of her needs, so let's say tracking activity, and we say, why does she want to track her activity? And then we just keep asking why with each answer, and that helps us to get really deep under the surface. So those are some of the activities. Whoops, I forgot, I skipped ahead. There we go. Okay, here we go. I'm looking at my notes and I got a little lost. So those are some activities, some outputs. You can create a problem statement. That's a statement that actually does have, well, it can have a formula, but it's just a statement of saying, here's what we're trying to solve for. And then the one that we did in the workshop, the output is called a user story. A user story is also a sentence that is a formula, and it seems pretty basic on the surface, but it actually helps you get really deep underneath the surface. So the formula is, as a type of user, I want to complete an action so that I can achieve the goal. And though it seems simple, each different fill in the blank moment allows you a chance to really reflect. When we talk about as a type of person or type of persona or type of user, we can get at what's the part of that person that is in the most need. So rather than with Kathy, for example, you'll see we don't just say as a woman or as an older person who wants to go to the gym. Or, that actually might have been something similar to what we wrote. I'll have to review it. But we can get at more of who that person is underneath, and each of those fill in the blanks can have their own weight to them, where we learn about that. So here's a little bit of a clip of Evelina and I coming up with a user story. And you'll notice that in each section, in each fill in the blank, it provides quite a deep discussion. So again, it's a lot more than just fill in the blank. It's talk a lot, reflect a lot, and then fill in the blanks.
So the first one, as a blank, how would we kind of frame our understanding of Kathy to understand her needs in that?
I mean, she's female, she's recently retired. How can we frame that?
Yeah. As a yeah, it's kind of tricky.
It is, yeah.
Like, sometimes you get stumped. Because, like, you can make it really simple of, like, as a retired woman, but I don't think that necessarily gets at some of those underlying, like, we can kind of tie in the needs and the motivations into how we fill it out here, so.
Yeah. But, I mean, if we continue building on that, so as a retired woman who, and then we can link that to one of the motivations, who want to stay active.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So we gotta write small. Retired woman who wants to stay active.
Oh, that fits.
Perfect. Okay. I want to. So this is where the actions, or what, like actual things she would be doing. I want to maybe like engage with my local gym, or would you add to that or subtract from that?
No, let's go with that.
I have more space for this one and less words, so messed that up. Local gym. Good.
Great.
That looks like a S, so I'll fix that. And there's a couple extra lumps on the M, but that's okay. I think we can read it. Okay, so as a retired woman who wants to stay active, I want to engage with my local gym so that I can... I feel like there's a lot of things we can put here.
Yeah, definitely.
So that I can, I don't know, because there can be something about, like, going back to the be social, like, so connecting with the community, just, having something to do at the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes people who have recently retired are like, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah,
I have all this
exactly.
free time. So, so that I can spend my newfound free time.
Yes.
Doing
something that's good for me.
Yeah, that's perfect. Because that can be, the active stuff is good for you and the social stuff is good for you. So, okay. So that I can use my newfound free time Oh, yeah, doing something good for me. And I like that because, and I like user stories in general because it kind of gets at, who this is about, which is the most important thing, of course. It gets at, the things they need to do, the kind of tasks, and then why, I think having that why is so important to, like, it helps to focus what do we prioritize and just knowing what's underneath everything. So that's great. Okay, so as a retired woman who wants to stay active, I want to engage with my local gym so that I can use my newfound free time doing something good for me. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, me too.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, so here we have the clip from our templates, the full user story sentence here. So as a retired woman who wants to stay active, yeah, so there we go. So we didn't say who wants to go to the gym, it's who wants to stay active. So again, getting at underneath the surface, not just what she wants to do, but when she wants to kind of a partially a goal there. I want to engage with my local gym so that I can use my newfound free time doing something good for me. So we go a lot deeper than so that I can track my exercise or so that I can whatever. It's, what does she really want underneath the surface? Next phase here, we get into explore possibilities. Personally, this is one of my favorite stages. I think it's a toss-up between empathizing and exploring possibilities. I love a good workshop where you're coming up with ideas, love a good post-it note session. This is about quantity over quality. So we're still looking at our personas, we're still looking at our user stories. How do we help those users achieve those goals? And this is the first stage where we're actually getting into solutions. Notice that this session is about halfway or a little more than halfway, depending on how much time the recordings took up. We're already about halfway through, and we're just now starting to come up with possible solutions. We haven't even reached a solution. We're just exploring it. All of that foundational work of understanding and defining means that as we explore possibilities, they're actually something to kind of refer back to. You can add any sort of possibility. Does not have to be a good idea. Sometimes bad ideas can actually spur on good ideas. So I always try to write something, even if as soon as it comes into my head, even if I think this is a horrible idea, I hope we don't pick this post-it. So write it down, put it up on the board, and it can spark somebody else to have a really good idea. So a lot of activities here that you can do. Workshops are usually kind of a place where a lot of this happens. And that usually involves a lot of post-its, as I said. One activity that we're going to do here is using Crazy Eights, which we'll talk about in a second. And then there's also different frames of mind. We'll talk about Scamper as well, which is a way to kind of inspire possible solutions. And so let's talk about Crazy Eights. So the activity that we did here at the workshop was about generating ideas. This is one that is a little bit more structured than the post-its, and it's meant to spark you to think through things a little bit further, but again, not too far. So this is where everyone pulls out their 8.5 by 11 paper, and they fold it, not actually into a crane as you see here, but you fold it typically in half, and then in half again, and then once more. So in half 3 times, and that should give you 8 squares. Or not squares, rectangles really. So 8 quadrants means 4 too. 8 rectangles for you to draw, and each rectangle is going to be a spot for you to draw a new idea. So when you have those 8 spots, you'll then put on a timer. You have 1 minute per sketch. And then you'll just go ahead and create. Now, when you hear sketching, you're thinking, oh, I'm a horrible drawer, or, well, maybe you're not thinking that, maybe you're an amazing artist, but a lot of us aren't that great at sketching. But the good news is these ideas are not meant to be something beautiful. You'll see in our pictures in a little bit. They're pretty sloppy because it's just about visualizing an idea. One thing I like about this activity is because it's a quiet activity, it's each individual person creating for themselves. Now, you may not know this because of this is a digital presentation, but if you've seen me in person, you may know that I'm an extrovert. I don't usually, depending on the room, I don't usually have a problem speaking up. I can be loud. I can, contradict when I'm comfortable enough and totally involved in all the discussions, right? Some people are not so outgoing. Some people are a little more nervous. Some people are think a little bit more before they speak than I do. And so what I like about this activity is when we go through and show our designs to other people, every single person has a spot in the room. They have their chance to talk. They have their ideas presented and a part of the discussion. I think that's one reason why workshops are, to me, a much better form, much better form of communicating with each other, rather than just a regular meeting where it's just everybody talking. When you have everybody talking, you have extroverts like me taking over, and I'm not always going to come up with the best ideas. I think I come up with some amazing ideas. Just kidding. Sometimes maybe, but otherwise the quiet person next to me doesn't have a say. So I like that this forces the people like me to sit back and let the others speak as well. So it keeps me in check. Okay, so now this page, as you can see, we have different things that we use in sketching. These are used in wireframes, and it can also be used in Crazy Eights to have rough sketches. Again, it doesn't need to be pretty. It can be just some rectangles and lines and squigglies, just to get the idea across. And then we also have this kind of, it's a nice little acronym called SCAMPER. And this just helps us come up with some ideas. If we're stuck and we're not quite sure what ideas to come up with, we can think of how could we substitute something that already exists, swap it for something else? How could we combine things that already exist? So 2 or more things, put them together, see what that comes up with. How can you adapt something that already exists? So change it to fit our needs, similar to modify. I'm not really sure what the difference is there, but they needed an extra vowel maybe, so they added that in. I'm not sure. Put to another use, so not so much changing something, but taking something and see, can we use this for an additional purpose as well? Eliminate, maybe the solution is just get rid of something that's making things complicated, or reverse. So these are just ways to kind of get your mind to think about things in a different way if you're stuck. So now Evelina and I did a little bit of Crazy Eights. We did Crazy Fours. Really glad we did, because it was kind of hard to come up with some after a while. But I'll also mention, so one thing I noticed during this was what was good about having that time for me was I came up with an idea pretty quickly and then sketched it out. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to go to the next section there. But we still had some time left on the timer. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to skip ahead. I'm going to, spend the rest of the time on this quadrant. I guess it was a quadrant since we only did 4. So spend some more time with this quadrant, see if I can add to it or change it. And so it could go either way, where you're going up and then the timer goes off and it's 1 minute and you realize, oh, I have to go on to the next one. So challenge your brain to kind of flip gears. But also, if you come up with it fast enough, it forces you to spend a little bit more time with it. Maybe there's more you can do with it to change it. So that was something that I kind of had a little realization there as well. So we're always all still learning. So it was great.
Okay. Ready, set, go. Okay. So we are we've done a lot of sketches, and you have to think fast, so they're pretty rough sketches, as you can probably see. A lot of scribbles, a lot of arrows. So now we're going to just show our ideas to each other, and just kind of talk about them, see what we like about each other's ideas, and then we'll come up with kind of a combined prototype idea or wireframe sketch that will be what we then test and share with people to get some feedback. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, the first thing I was thinking about is that, with working out, it's hard to kind of see the results at once, and we did have that as one of the frustrations. So one way to get more immediate feedback is to kind of have a Tamagotchi to your watch, to your smartwatch, right?
Yeah.
So whenever you increase your pulse, you do a workout, it gets more and more happy. However, if you don't go to the gym for some reason, you can kind of see that it's not doing that great, to kind of push you.
I see your sketch is like a little flower.
It is a little
So your
flower.
sweat maybe acts to water the flower.
Oh, I love that.
And then it like wilts. Oh, that's funny. I like that. Yeah. Okay, I'll do mine, and then we can kind of go back and forth. So my first one, most of mine are kind of like, wearables in terms of the watch kind of idea. And it has like a list of the machines that there are, and then you can, I made this one too big, but then I scribbled another one. So you could click on it, and it gives you some information like, the name, and then like focus areas. So like, oh, this one works on your, I don't know, I'm not good at muscle names, but quadriceps, isn't that a muscle? I don't know. This one focuses on that. Here's how you use it, just a little bit more helping you be familiar with it. And then also maybe the gym has like some either cameras or some way to know if it's in use.
Yeah.
So it could tell you like, oh, it's free, or someone's been there for this long, and maybe can estimate when it might be free. Or there are 6 people eyeing it, so maybe come back tomorrow. Just something that kind of gives you an idea, so you don't have to awkwardly go around. That's always the worst. You're like, someone's still there? Yep. Oh, okay. Come back later. So some kind of way to know if or when it will be free.
That's great.
That's one idea.
All right. So one thing regarding working out with machines is that you usually get one set of metrics on the machine versus on your on your phone and things like that. So it'd be very nice if you had like a ring or something similar that you can connect to the machine, so that you get an exact how you have been running, how you have been working out, and then connect that to statistics, so that is correct.
I like that, the connectivity. Cool. Good. Yeah, my next one was glasses.
Oh.
Because it's wearable. And it's just a big reminder across the front. Time to go to the gym. It's maybe not safe if you're driving, but this is brainstorming, so it doesn't have to be safe. And then I started to kind of get into another thing of like, maybe you can see your stats. This is how much you worked out today. This is, I'm not a big fan of counting calories or being obsessive, but some people like to do that. So like, you burned this many calories today, and just some information that people like to track that you can kind of see there.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah.
Next up, I thought it was pretty hard actually to come up with 4 different
It
ones.
was, yeah. I'm glad we didn't do 8.
Yeah. I was thinking, we do have glasses, we do have watches, but what about the shoes? Maybe there's some kind of shoe installation, like sole, to check your stance, basically, because it's very easy to get hurt in the beginning. And if she has not gone to the gym previously, kind of, lean back on your heels more, things like that. Give me that feedback.
I love that. That's great.
Cool.
Be really good for like runners too, who are like interested in running.
Yeah.
I, for a very, very brief time, decided to get into running, and I hurt myself after like a week. So I was like, okay, done with that. But yeah, having something that's like, you could have done this better, or maybe take a break today because you're just getting started. My friend told me after the fact, oh yeah, when you start, you shouldn't go every day. I was like, well, that would have been nice to know. But yeah, so I love that. I love that, like an insert or something. That's cool. Let's see, my next one was just kind of like having a schedule for, you know, if they have classes and being able to filter if there's like, I put Zumba as so if they have Zumba classes or filtering by different kinds of dance or whatever kinds of classes they have. And then also having like a little, this is what this is. Maybe someone doesn't know what Zumba is. So you can have an information thing that shows you like, this is what it is, and then you can decide, that doesn't sound like that's for me, or, ooh, that sounds exciting, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, last one for me.
Oh, you also got some glasses.
Yeah, I did. Some AR glasses, and if I'm being honest, it kind of relates to the concept I already talked about.
Yeah.
But I mean, checking stance could also be visible, right? So if you're able to look in the mirror, you can get some corrections on how to do things. Yeah, maybe getting some stats in there as well.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, too. Like ideas can build off of each other.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes they're like just slightly different, but you know, again, it's brainstorming, so it's all about ideas building off each other. Yeah, my last one feels a little bit obvious, but it was the last one, so
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like a find my gym kind of thing.
Yeah,
For when you're in the different cities, can kind of Google Maps, but specifically for that gym. And then it could show you like what facilities that one has.
Yeah.
Like I know with the YMCA, for example, different locations have more or less things. The Grand Rapids one is actually like really fancy. It's like sauna, hot tub, pool, kids pool with slides and all kinds of things, and dance studio, everything. But then other ones I've been to, it's like, here's some machines. So it's good to know what there is, you know, before you go. So yeah,
That's really good.
same to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, great ideas. Okay, so what's next? Oh yeah, next we will, we can kind of talk about what do we like of each other's and what do we like of our own, like what was our favorite things, and see what we should put in our kind of testable design to get feedback on.
Nice.
So, do we want to, I should have brought some.
So Evelina and I came up with combined 8 different ideas, and then we went through and kind of shared our ideas with each other, where we were going with these thoughts. Again, as you can see, this one's Evelina's, this one's mine. They're not very pretty, no straight lines, and it's just about getting an idea down on paper. So here you'll see Evelina and I kind of sharing our ideas with each other, and you know, encouraging each other, which is another really big part of creating together as well. Before we move on really quickly, I wanted to share something that happened with one of the groups at the CETX workshop because I thought it was actually really insightful. As I pointed out here, we're going back to that double diamond, and I highlighted the circles here because remember, each of these phases can jump back to the other phases. One of the groups, you know, as we were reviewing at the end and talking about the workshop, you know, said kind of like, what did you learn? What were some interesting things that happened? And one group said, we actually kind of changed the premise. We decided we couldn't come up with any good ideas for the in-car app. So we just decided to do a different kind of app for another platform. And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh man, they cheated the system. But I thought it was actually a really good point that, you know, you may come to the build and refine section, or I think it was in the explore possibilities maybe, that they realized none of these ideas are actually going to solve for that user's needs. As they went back to the personas, as they went back to the problems or the user statement, they realized this is just not going to be what we need it to be. Let's go back to specifying the needs and decide kind of from another perspective, maybe another device that they can use. So that was just a nice little thing that happened I wanted to share. So now we move on to the build and refine stage, or the prototype stage, as it's called in the, you know, the classical phases. So this is where we start to actually draw out some solutions with a little bit more, little bit closer fidelity to the final product. It still doesn't get into anything. It will eventually get into more fancy prototypes, maybe some digital prototypes, and all of that. But it can start with something simple. You'll see, is it my next slide? Let's see here. I'll skip ahead. So you can actually see you can create a prototype that is made out of paper. So rather than creating a digital thing before you get programmers into the coding phase, which can be a lot more time consuming if you are working on the wrong thing, or it can be more expensive since programming time is pretty expensive in most cases. So you can start with something simple and do testing on something like a paper prototype. So you can do prototypes and mock-ups at various stages, get feedback all along the way. So I think the build and refine and the testing phase really need to be quite closely linked. So you can do testing on something really simple. It takes 5 minutes, and then kind of go from there and get it more and more refined as you learn about, your easier, simpler prototypes. One thing is that people will say is fail cheap. So rather than spending that expensive programming time on something and then testing it, finding out it wasn't good, test on paper, test on, some less expensive forms of a solution before moving on. Okay, so I will show some of the, so what we ended up doing here in the build and refine phase was we took a little vote. We gave ourselves 2 votes each, and we put stars by the ideas that we liked the most. Funny enough, we put stars on each other's ideas, and so this in the build and refine stage, you go from exploring the possibilities, narrowing down. So again, that's that converging to find what solution you want to go with, and then from here, just for the sake of the workshop and keeping it simple, what we did was combining the ideas, or we chose one idea to kind of go with, combining it a little bit with some of the other ideas, and then we chose that to go ahead and do some testing on. So here you can see the idea of, in the previous one, we had just a rough sketch here. And we decided to go with the idea of having a list of the machines that were unknown, or maybe known, but unknown, to be able to click on them, learn a little bit more, what focus areas it would go on to, how to use it. And then also we kind of combined it with Evelina's idea here of either having the shoes or like the inserts that track your own performance, or the machines being able to be connected and tracking. And so this details page could also give an analysis of, here's the last time you used this machine, or you did this many reps, or you can improve it because of this, or whatever, or you did an amazing job before. So we took that, and again, for the sake of simplifying, rather than creating a whole test, since, we're not actually working on this design, what we did as a simple activity was just to ask for feedback. But in the actual world of testing, there's a lot more that goes into it. Again, fail cheap, test early and test often is also another thing I like to say. So testing on the simple things before getting more complicated. Also, when we get into testing, and this ties back into the empathize as well, which I don't think I mentioned, but it's super important to be unbiased. When we get to the user testing, we have already spent a fair amount of time on prototyping, on designing. We sometimes can get attached to our ideas or our designs. We really want people to like them. And so we can get a little bit emotional, and we have to take a step back, think of it as the design, as the team's work rather than your own. When I'm doing user testing, if it's live, if I'm with the person or talking to the person, I always make sure not to tell them my involvement in the design, even if it was just me working on it. But I always try to make it seem like I'm just doing the testing. I'm just here to get your feedback. It was the team's work. That way they're going to be less likely to try to say nice things just to make you feel good about your design. They'll be more honest. So it's really important to stay unbiased here at this stage, as always. Some activities, there's lo-fi usability testing. And again, usability testing is to test how well your design is able to be used, how easy it is how intuitive it is, how easy it is to kind of figure out on your own. You have moderated and unmoderated usability testing. So moderated is where you're sitting either in the room with somebody or on a virtual call with them live. And this can be nice to, if you have immediate follow-up questions or they have questions and they're getting stuck, it can help with that. The danger is, again, letting your bias show and making sure that they feel comfortable with you, to be honest, but you're not so nice and engaged that they're trying not to hurt your feelings. And then unmoderated would be where they're testing it, they're on their own time, making a recording of themselves and the screen, so we can see how they interact with it. That one's nice for it. You don't have to schedule time in this day and age. It's sometimes hard to find the right time for multiple people to meet up. It's also nice, they're more likely to be honest again with sitting in the room by themselves. If they're frustrated, they're usually a little more comfortable to show that. But again, if they do get tripped up and they're not doing the right things, that can show you, okay, we didn't do a good job on the design, but it sometimes can keep you from getting into the actual goals of what you needed to see. So there's benefits to each of those. And another thing that's super simple, sometimes you can ask your teammates. Not always the right thing to do, but if you're in a crunch, if you're running out of time, you just need something quick. If you don't have access to users, we've run into that where we don't get volunteers for things. And so we just did some testing with our colleagues, which isn't the most ideal, but again, it's better to do some testing than no testing. But it's also a good thing to do. I'll do this if I make an icon and I'm not really sure if it's, can be identified at scale, because icons can be pretty small. If you've seen CET, which you probably have, there are some pretty small icons in our toolbars, and sometimes I'm very proud of myself for coming up with something clever, but it's not actually something that you can identify. It involves too much cognitive work to understand what it is. But yeah, so I'll show my colleague a picture of it, preferably one that they can't zoom into, and say, can you tell what this is? What would you think that this tool would do? And if they can't tell, that's usually a bad sign. Time to go with something maybe a little more literal or recognizable. So I really like this little clip. I think it shows, again, what I kind of was talking about with that bias. You also kind of saw it in the video where you have the in-person visibility testing, and if this is either the developer or the UXer says, no, that's not how you're supposed to use it. But of course, it's a thought bubble. You should never say that out loud. But because the user's not wrong, it's just whether the design was clear enough to communicate what it's supposed to do. So I thought that was pretty funny. Now, with our workshop, to do, just to be really quick, rather than putting together something to prototype and actually test, what we did was we shared our designs and got some feedback. Feedback can be a way of testing in that early phases of concept testing. Does this sound like a good idea? Once you get into the further stages, it's more refined. Then you want to do some actual testing with some users. But again, just getting some feedback early on can still be a form of testing or user research. So I got some feedback on our design from another colleague of ours, and so some suggestions that he made was to have like a warm-up suggested, so that shows all the machines. Maybe you need to do some stretching, or maybe you need to do some cardio to get your heart rate up faster before just jumping in and lifting some heavy weights. So again, especially for somebody like Kathy, who maybe hasn't done a lot of lifting or hard work with strength training before, she may need to know that background information of make sure you don't get hurt. Gyms can be dangerous. Another really interesting insight. So Evelina and I were working on this. We are both identify as female. This colleague identifies as a male, and he made a really interesting point that men don't always get complicated. Men don't always get complimented by each other or others, and so that I thought was a really, really good insight. And it didn't, of course, relate to Kathy, who also identifies as female, so our persona, but as we would work on growing our designs, we would probably have other personas as well. And some of those might identify as men. Maybe they need a little bit of encouragement to be proud of their work, after an especially intensive workout, something that says, you're amazing. You did a great job. Like, look at your progress. So it doesn't fully substitute for human interaction. Make sure you go out there and compliment your male friends. Still tried to combine the words complicated and compliment. So I'll have to dig into that in therapy later. But anyways, yeah, so it's something that would be good to, as we have more personas that we're trying to design for, something to keep in mind. Okay, so I think I'm probably way over time now, but I just want to thank you so much for coming to this virtual presentation. If you were at the live presentation, you came back to learn more, you're awesome. Thank you. But yeah, I hope it was a little bit insightful. If you are a developer out there learning a little bit more about the benefits of UX, the stepping back, thinking about it first before doing. And if you are not a developer, hopefully it still kind of gave you some ideas of how can you use the design thinking to approach any sort of problem. It can be a marketing problem. It can be a sales problem. You can do a workshop on anything. I've used design thinking to make personal life decisions. If I wasn't quite sure about a big decision to make, I would use design thinking, get some Post-its out, and it doesn't even have to be Post-its. Maybe not everyone's obsessed with Post-its like me and my family, but just something to, have that mindset of looking at a problem from an intentional process. If you want to reach out to me, feel free. Here's my email address, contact information, and thanks again so much for listening, and we'll catch you next year.